The 7 stages of spiritual alchemy. Contrary to popular belief, alchemy is not about transmuting base metals into gold. Instead, it is the secret science of illumination and inner liberation. Whether you understand alchemy as a science or as a spiritual psychology instrument, alchemy is ultimately concerned with transformation and change. While physical alchemy is concerned with altering and transforming the properties within matter, spiritual alchemy is concerned with freeing your spiritual self, which is trapped within you by the unrefined parts of you. Example, your fears, your personal beliefs, self-loathing, and etc. Spiritual alchemy is vastly more multifaceted. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of spiritual alchemy is its objective, which is to free you from your core wounds, your core beliefs, your soul loss, and other self-destructive personalities. Existing in pure being or soulful awareness is the ultimate state of transformation. It is the gold of spiritual alchemy. It attempts to restructure your personality and the various levels of attachment, avoidance, and the identification you may possess. The first step is calcination. Calcination is the process of heating and decomposing raw matter, or in other words, breaking down parts of ourselves that are in the way of our own happiness. Often, we'd rather be right or fulfill an idea of perfection than to truly be happy. So we continue neglecting the exploration of ourselves. The stage of calcination represents the stage in our lives where we begin breaking down our egos, self-doubt, stubbornness, self-sabotaging behavior, pride, and arrogance, and put it aside so we can find out what is underneath. This stage refers to the breaking of our attachments to the world. Along the journey of life, it is easy to get lured into the rat race. We seek wealth, but also status, fame, prestige, things to feed our ego and our own perception of our identity. These things can be beneficial, but the larger of a figure it plays in our lives, the more we chase it, and the more it can consume us. The break with the worldly can come to us in something as sudden as a traumatic event, like loss. Or it can come gradually over time through the suffering that we experience in life, or even when we get all the things that we could ever want, but without feeling a true sense of fulfillment. This stage asks us to humble ourselves. Fire sparks the journey into the self. Stage 2 is disillusion. Once we have broken down all of our personality characteristics that were in the way, we are left with the process of disillusion, which is the beginning of feeling less identification with our false sense of self. Once we are free from our pride or self-doubt, we can take one step back and truly observe our positive and negative qualities. In this stage, our inability to take responsibility for our many faults, our avoidance of our traumatizing memories, and other inner tensions rise to the surface, causing us to become aware of how our behavior might be affecting others. This is the beginning of spiritual maturity and the spiritual awakening process. Sometimes this stage of transformation is brought about accidentally by illness and misfortunes in our lives that cause us to really pay attention to what we are doing, shocking us out of our avoidance patterns, such as workaholism, drugs, and TV watching. Here, we are plunged into the waters of unconscious when you are primarily driven by ego, as one is prior to understanding your journey into the spiritual. We may have buried parts of ourselves in order to create an image of what our identity is. It is in this stage that we must unearth those parts of us, the parts of us that we have rejected, whether they are perceived faults or painful memories or traumatic upbringings. The water in this stage asks us to let go and to release the structure and the systems that define our perceptions of ourselves. Stage 3, separation. Separation is the stage where we make our thoughts and our emotions more defined by isolating them from other thoughts and emotions. A simple example is our attempt to free our heart from resentment while trying to forgive someone. The process of separation involves truly becoming aware of our authentic feelings for a person or for ourselves. In this stage, we choose to experience our anger, our frustration, or disappointment towards another or ourselves, rather than reverting back to that old habit of doubtfully trying to forgive or forget because it is the right or comfortable thing to do. Separation is closely entwined with shadow work in that we must allow all feelings and thoughts within us to surface side by side. This helps us to isolate particular elements of our character in order to honestly see and assess them. Now that we have unearthed the unconscious materials that we once discarded, we can also now sift through it to really find parts of it that can help us grow. What parts of you have you rejected that you have hidden from the world can actually make you stronger? How can these parts of the self, which are considered by rational mind worthless or weak, bring joy to others? How can we incorporate this narrative that was once so painful to you into the greater arc of your story? On the flip side, you also have to be honest about what parts of your shadow legitimately hold you back and work to discard those habits, emotions, memories, or narratives from your identity. The stage of conjunction. After the purification and the clarification of the first 3 stages, we must properly combine the remaining elements within us through the process of conjunction. While in the previous step, we separated and learned to distinguish all the separate feelings and thoughts within us. Conjunction provides the inner space, the simmering, that is required for us to truly and honestly accept all parts of our authentic self. When we experience this stage of spiritual alchemy, all of our unconscious thoughts and feelings bubble up to the surface into the light of conscious awareness. In this stage, journaling, introspection, solitude, and meditation are very useful. Learn more about how to journal. It is at this moment where we reintegrate. Unconscious and conscious come together. At this stage, though we are aware of the social structures that are at play in the world and that we have fed the ego, we are not influenced by them. We are free. It is here that the alchemist is at peace with both the perceived darker aspects of the self and the mask that they have to wear when interacting with the world. The 5th stage is fermentation. Fermentation is the beginning of our process of rebirth. This stage can be compared to the death of a grape, which then becomes the birth of wine. While the first 4 stages involved working with aspects of our old personality, in this stage of fermentation, we begin to experience moments of our more refined self. Fermentation occurs in 2 parts: putrefaction and spiritualization. Putrefaction is the decomposition of our former selves, the process of inner death, by which the old elements of our conscious and unconscious minds are allowed to rot and decompose. Some may call this stage the dark night of the soul, as it can be followed by troublesome mental states such as depression. On the other hand, spiritualization is the stage in which we begin to look at the world in a new light. With the right guidance and with solid inner work, spiritualization involves letting go of all the aspects of ourselves and our lives that do not serve or contribute to our spiritual transformation. This is when we can taste moments of great inner peace and stillness. The sixth stage is distillation. Once we begin our spiritualization, we must find a way to continue to integrate all of these spiritual realizations into our lives in order to allow them to become permanent. Distillation is the level of further purification. One example of distillation is finding ways to live from a daily place of inner peace, even in the most mundane circumstances. With enough repeated practice of constantly dying and being reborn in the present moment without entering again into the habits, identifications, and the cycles of the mind, we experience a strong and profound inner transformation. In the East, this is what's mostly defined as self-realization or enlightenment. Certain practices such as mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and self-inquiry are useful at this stage. The seventh and final stage is coagulation. Similar to the blood's ability to form clots and stop bleeding, coagulation is the moment when we've broken open the head, or in other words, we have become free from the mind and we have allowed our consciousness or soul to connect with the materia prima, the spirit. The meeting point between these two opposites, such as the spiritual self and raw matter, heaven and hell, and life and death, is the point where existence becomes self-aware. This is the moment when our lives are without duality, when matter becomes spirit, or spirit is manifested in material form. Here, there is a meeting between matter and spirit, inner and outer, good and evil, the union of dualities. It is at this stage where the spirit has become self-aware. It perceives itself and it sees and understands the inner world and outer world are not different, but reflections of each other. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.